Today, tour operator Assel Gubaidullina will introduce us to ecotourism in the Aksai branch of the Ile-Alatau National Park. The best place to start acquainting with the park is its visit center, where they will provide you with some general information like the park's history, geographical location, area, its animal and plant worlds, as well as the efforts by the park staff.
Вот эта долина, это все.
This whole valley was planted about 50 years ago. The forest is still young. The woods beyond the rocks were there prior to us coming here.
Который был до нас еще.
Nature protection begins with environmental education. It is extremely important for children to absorb love for the environment since very early age. The park has a special unit dealing specifically with environmental awareness.
The
main mission of our environmental educators is to work with students of the so-called school forestries or forest schools. Their aims are to engage school children from an early age in the process of nature care and planting love for wildlife among them. In addition, we are conducting awareness raising for students and volunteers. The park also holds various applied environmental actions. For example, with the onset of spring, we launched the so-called special environmental missions, mostly for cleaning the park's premises from the accumulated garbage and planting trees. Unfortunately, not all tourists are used to properly behaving themselves in the wild, but the efforts of the park staff are already yielding tangible results. Lack of eco-culture is the main nature's enemy. For a whole month, we held a special large-scale action called Eco-Footprint-Free Resting that aimed to once again remind local residents and the park's guests of the need to preserve the nature of the national park and not leave any footprint behind. That is, taking care of your garbage and collecting it in designated places. It's hard to believe, but there are tourists who are still leaving garbage at their campsites. The main outcome of the action was that both vacationers and people living on the park's territory were directly involved in the active process of taking care of wildlife and gained their personal experience that was likewise useful for the park. Today we are going on a guided tour to the Aksai Gorge, and Assel Gubaidullina will lead us. Any trip to the mountains, we usually start by paying a visit to a national park. Let's find out what has to be done to get into the mountains and not violate anything. Assel is a tour operator specializing in eco-tours for both foreign guests and our compatriots. To do her work properly, she of course has to thoroughly examine all the natural and cultural attractions of Kazakhstan before offering them to clients. What types of tourism can we offer to our tourists? In the Aksai branch of the national park, there are two options. The first one is independent, when a guest can hike on her or his own after paying 200 tenge of the state duty and 0.1 MCI of the tax. Assel is more interested not in picnic tourism, but in wildlife observation tours.
Если вас интересует.
If you are more into ecotourism, then you will have to write a letter in advance to the Director General specifying how many people will be on the group, how many days you'll spend in the park, maybe some special requests. We provide a guide, tents, sleeping mats, etc. Guests pay for everything in advance. We get all the paperwork done and set the dates. There are 6 tourist trails on the territory of the park's Aksai branch, namely the Ile-Alatau Morals, the Uitas route along the Kaskelian Gorge, the route along the Aksai Gorge up to the Akjar Rockfall, to the Aksai Monastery, along the Koltsevoya or Ring Gorge, and to the Monjelki. The latter is the longest. It takes about 3 days to complete this hike. What you can and cannot do while on the park's premises. What do tourist companies have to warn their clients about? Setting up bonfires and cooking kebabs is not allowed on the routes. What is the fine for setting up a fire? About 100 monthly calculation indices. Another thing which auto tourists should remember is that while on the premises of specially protected areas, it is strictly forbidden to turn off public roads and drive over virgin land. There is a special clause for such a violation, precisely for damaging the soil. When an SUV drives over virgin land, it disturbs the fertile ground layer and disrupts the grass cover, which lead to erosion. It's Article 250. Don't forget about it. Our staff catch people doing it, register violations, and issue fines. What will happen if an illegal bonfire leads to a forest fire? In this case, we calculate how many trees and what tree species were damaged. How many hectares burned out? The personal consequences will be quite severe, as it is a criminal offense. The fine can amount to millions of tenge. The red-listed trees are counted piece by piece. The fine for which is 1,000 MCIs. Wild animal observations have been becoming increasingly popular recently. Whereas previously it was mostly foreign tourists doing it, nowadays many Kazakhstanis are wanting to get to know the animal world of their country closer. People are willing to pay good money for the aesthetic pleasure of communicating with wildlife, but the natural parks have to guarantee them a high probability of encountering wild animals. Nobody wants to fly across the planet to see an animal empty forest.
Лесник у себя отметку делает, сколько человек к нему, кто.
The foresters log all the information. How many people came to their plot, who stopped by. Jointly with our guide, they lead the groups along the trails. Our guide tells the clients what they can and cannot do. Explain all the rules. For example, where they can put up tents to avoid the unnecessary threat from the animal world. In summer, bears can pay a visit to the campsite. I remember when we were still boys and there was no national park around, meeting a bear was quite rare. Now it's totally different. You constantly see broken branches on apple trees and bear tracks on every trail. Does this mean that their population has increased?
На сегодняшний день, да, именно медведя число увеличилось.
Definitely. The number of bears has grown about 5 times. There are so many of them now that both local residents and summer vacationers are complaining. They lost fear of humans and can come down to the summer cottages and gardens.
На дачный массив посетить чьи-либо огороды.
Were there any cases registered of bears attacking people? No such cases were registered, but people bumped into them literally 5 meters away. What about other animals, say morals, alpine ibexes, snow leopards? You should have many leopards. You were the first to take a picture of a snow leopard. What year was it? It was in June 2014 when I first met a snow leopard, literally 30 meters away. At that time I had already worked 6 years in the national park. It posed to me and was not afraid of me. It allowed observing it for about half an hour. In the national park, the feed base is sufficient for snow leopards. There are special groups of photographers willing to pay good money for the opportunity to encounter and take pictures of Central Asian animals, although they want to be sure that their journey will bring the desired results.
Национальный парк может вам дать примерно 90%.
The national park can give you about 90% guarantee of encountering a moral or, say, a bear. As to the Turkestan lynx, it is an extremely cautious beast. It's more cautious than the snow leopard and hunts only at night. To see a snow leopard, you will have to live and stay quiet on the trail for about a week.
Как правильно сказать, около недели.
Do you know how many ibexes, morals and snow leopards inhabit the branch's territory?
По последним счетам, на территории именно Аксайского филиала больше 15.
Based on the most recent counts, on the territory of the Aksai branch, there are over 15 snow leopards, 400 ibexes, more than 1,000 roe deer, about 1,500 wild boars and probably 200 morals.
И голов, наверное, 200 морала.
I know you're also involved in reforestation and planting the Almaty apple tree specifically. How many hectares do you plant each year?
Согласно лесоустройству, у нас ежегодно.
According to our forest management plan, we annually prepare 10 hectares of soil. Of these, we plant 5 hectares of the Malus severaceae species, 2 hectares of apricots and red-listed species, and an additional 3 hectares of Tian Shan spruce. As per the last presidential decree, to boost tree planting, we added 2 hectares of the Sievers apple tree. So, as of today, each year we do land preparation on 12 hectares of soil. We are in the midst of the morel breeding season. I heard that it is during the mating season that special inspector mission raids the premises to protect morels.
Охрана морала началась у нас с 15.
We've launched the task force to protect morels on September the 15th. They are now going through their estrus. We have prepared special routes and installed 2 checkpoints. There are also horse patrol routes. Our task force goes on 3-day missions. In fact, you can also take part in such a mission with our hunting specialist. From what distance do you think I would be able to take a picture of a morel? What lenses should I prepare to be more exact? During mating, I think you can have a chance of seeing a morel from a distance of 200 meters probably. To increase the number of animals in national parks, they conduct various biotechnical efforts, including winter feeding. Boars and pheasants get barley. For this, the park procures 33 tons of barley annually, including 10 tons for its Aksai branch. For morels, they prepare salted whisks that they put in special feeders during the snowy period. We decided to start our visit to the Aksai branch with the tourist sites located in the free access zone with public roads leading up to them. We are going deeper into the Aksai gorge. Its lower part is densely developed with summer cottages. The Taskamasu stone castle is one of the most easily accessible sites in the gorge. It is located on the Aksai River and is quite a popular destination. You can get to the castle along the hiking trail. Look at that! It's a real castle raising over the slope. Let's go and have a closer look. It seems that these are the ruins of a real medieval castle. Yet in fact, this amazing structure was built at the end of the last century by an enthusiast. He had been building it at his own expense for many years. Apparently, he wanted to leave a mark in history, and we should say he definitely succeeded. Now, each passing tourist surely stops to take several selfies against the background of the remarkable structure. However, as it should be for a real castle, in addition to the fortress walls, it is protected by a rather stormy river, the Aksai. The river did not appear too stormy, and our cameraman decided to cross it just like that. It turned out a bad idea. It's not hard losing your balance on slippery rocks and falling. The only comforting fact about bathing in cold water is that it's healthy. To the joy of our hero, he judiciously left his phone and camera on the shore prior to crossing the river. Inside the castle, as it should be, special passes lead to the towers with arrow slits. Guys, it looks like a true medieval castle indeed. Although not much time had passed since laying the first brick, in some places the walls started collapsing. The river crossing in the opposite direction turned out more successful, thanks to the previously gained experience. We are continuing our exploration of the gorge. We drove up to the so-called Aksai rockfall. A couple of years ago, a large-scale rockfall took place here, so currently no passing through on a vehicle or on foot is allowed. We'll just take a couple of shots and we'll go further. If you are fatally tired, a few buckthorn berries will restore your strength. It was not by accident that before the Olympic Games in ancient Greece, they gave athletes sea buckthorn. Do you think they gave it to our athletes before they're going to the Olympic Games in Japan this year? I definitely feel the surge of energy filling me. Everyone knows this tree, right? It's the famous aspen. You can hang yourself on it if you are Judas, or use for making spears to kill vampires. Let me give you some new information that not everybody is aware of. If one day you decide to cut down an aspen tree inside a national park, you will pay only 500,000 tenge because every aspen tree is protected by law. They also say that if you hug an aspen tree, it will take away your negative energy and give you some positive one. In one Chinese source, I've read that hugging an old oak tree has the same effect. Then let me hug you. Is this the famous Aksai rockfall? Not sure, but I guess so. Mudslides are a common thing in the mountains. Every year, small slides come down, destroying roads and bringing other troubles with them. If you happen to hear a noise or roar of falling rocks coming from a summit, it's better to climb higher as quickly as possible. These are the traces of this year's mudslide. Have you ever seen a mudslide yourself? Yes, once. It was in 1986, if my memory serves me right, in Kumbelsu. I was sure mudslides were terrifying, but it had never occurred to me how powerful they really were. That time in the evening it was a flat river bed, but when we woke up in the morning there was a canyon 4-5 meters deep. The stones that it brought were quite large, as we could distinguish them from a distance of 50-60 meters.
50-60 метров.
We are continuing our journey. After the summer cottage community, you can arrive at a real monastery. The road to the monastery is supposed to be somewhere here. Let's ask this young gentleman over there. Let me show you. The old road went over those tops over there. There was no star there yet. Do you see those two fir trees? The summer cottages stretch almost up to the very monastery. People usually drive to their dachas, but we met a guy using quite an unusual type of transportation for these places.
Купил в Китае, привез, посмотрел, не понял как это.
I bought it in China, but couldn't understand how it worked. I started riding inside my house, but would always fall. Then I went outside, and the fear went away. It rides really well. The way is free and you can enjoy the surroundings, right? It seems you're walking and surfing at the same time. Exactly. Going shopping is also quite convenient because both my hands are free. There's no way you can carry plastic bags in both your hands and a backpack behind your back on a bike or a scooter. It's also a good exercise for your legs and knees specifically. It's a great exercise for your knees. What is a monowheel? A kind of sport or a means of transportation? It turned out it's a lifestyle. How powerful is this thing? What angle it can take? About 35-40 degrees, which is quite enough. You will not be able to take more yourself because of the fear of falling. Assel decided to start training immediately, as the mono wheel helps maintaining a flawless figure. So I just need to stand up like that and hold it. I feel like a bear in a circus. Let me ask you this, Sergey. Did you feel any difference in the brain activity? While riding, you are in a constant state of euphoria. The body is so relaxed on the go. No traffic jams and no swearing at impolite drivers. No concerns about taking care of your car. I have a car, but I almost don't use it. This year I drove 2,000 kilometers on my car and about 6,000 kilometers on the mono wheel. On a highway, mono wheels can go as fast as 80 kilometers per hour. The battery is enough for about 50 kilometers. Managing it, though, requires excellent movement coordination. After gaining a good command of your body, great aesthetic pleasure is guaranteed. If you are hooked, you can't do without it. You always want to be riding somewhere. Yet, let's not forget that inside national parks, movement on any type of vehicle is allowed only along public roads. We are saying goodbye to Sergey and heading towards the Seraphim Theognostus male Aksai monastery. The road there is closed and you will need to walk about a kilometer. The monastery is also temporarily closed to visitors, but we can still take a glance at it from the outside. The silence here is deafening. Oh God, look over there! They found temporary peace having hidden in the Aksai Gorge woods. Nobody could have thought that one day their killers would follow the same path to get to them. On August 11th, 1921, they found the bodies of Seraphim and Theognostus, and they were canonized.
Это Серафим и Феогност.
Я слышал эту же историю.
I heard the same story, only with the details of them first building a monastery at Meadow Valley.
Слишком людно.
It was too crowded there for them, and since the Soviet government did not favor any religion, they moved here, to the Aksai Gorge, then the edge of the world, so to say. Only 1 or 2 beekeepers used to live here, so the saints lived here for several years. They were killed by the Red Army soldiers, although they were more like bandits. After they had killed the monks, no criminal investigation was launched because nobody cared for a couple of monks. After a while, the same people committed another crime, killing and robbing somebody else. That time they were arrested. There was an investigation and they were executed. During that investigation, they discovered that the same bandits had previously killed the monks also.
Что они еще и монахов убили.
Now the Aksai monastery attracts many believers and simply inquisitive people. Gradually, the path is turning into a tourist trail. The monastery is located in an extraordinarily picturesque place, on top a hill. We can say that we got acquainted with the majority of the publicly accessible tourist attractions of the Aksai Gorge. The next phase of our journey is even more interesting. We will partake in a raid of the Morale Protection Task Force. We will join the most experienced inspectors, knowing the animal world of the Aksai Gorge as the back of their hand. Nurlan Dumshibayev and Nurbol Sakanov. The main thing is to immediately establish relations with your four-legged friend. Although horses undergo special training, each of them has its own character. What is its name? Rocinante. Another important thing to do is to properly pack and distribute the load evenly. The trail first goes along a country road and then turns onto a mountain path. Larch and pine do not grow in the Ile-Alatau. These plantations were planted in the middle of the last century. Although both pine and larch have adapted well to our conditions, their plantations do not expand naturally. The Tianshan or Shrinks' spruce, on the contrary, represents one of the natural residents of local mountain coniferous woods. In the summer, we put together haystacks specifically for feeding wild animals.
Вот это вот одновременно.
This here is hay combined with salt food supplement, so to say. You can see how many of them are around. Shrubs and deciduous trees mainly grow in the lower mountains. The coniferous belt begins at the altitude of 1,700 meters and stretches up to 2,800 meters. The alpine meadows are located even further up. The upper forest belt border is the best place for observing morals. It takes about 3 hours on horseback to cover the 12 kilometers between the checkpoint and the camp. We came to the place where morals graze in the evening. And now we will set up our camp in this birch grove. By the way, we will hobble our horses for them not to run away.
Чтобы они вот так далеко не убегали.
The campsite turned out to be extremely scenic, especially penetrated by sun rays in the morning and evening.
Смотри.
Look, there's a mermaid up on the tree. Let me go and try my luck with her. Time me, dear gentlemen. In exactly 1 minute, I will get us some good tea. Here we go. As promised, cheers! Do they fight for territory only in the fall? Yes, during the estrus period. Do they call their rivals to fight to capture more territory or females? It's more about females. The young males approach the females, so the mature males challenge the former to drive them away.
Я слышала еще, что они во время гона, вот моралы,
I've heard that during the mating season they become careless. Yes, during the estrus, they get very active and it's easier to encounter them. With the help of a special hunter's whistle, it's possible to draw a male morale into an open area. At first, Assel could not do it, but gradually the sound got better, although morals were still not believing her. Nurbal is a much more experienced whistle user. We hear a return cry coming from the woods, yet the owner of the deep voice is not hurrying out onto the glade. We need to try again. Finally, our efforts seem to yield success. The harem owner casually comes to the forest edge. Who has dared to challenge my rights to the territory and females? While the enemy is nowhere around, it will not hurt to take a bite before the battle. In the harem of this male, we count 5 females with cubs. The young deer born in the spring almost catch up with their mothers in size in the fall. Next year, young females themselves will become mothers, but young males will have to wait several years until they get strong enough to protect their harem from the encroachments by other males. Evolution entrusts the continuation of the genus only to the strongest and the boldest. While the male is cautiously surveying the surroundings, the females are actively grazing. Before the harsh winter, they need to accumulate as much fat as possible. A little lower, 3 roe deer are grazing on a grassy slope. Their marital unrest is already behind, as their estrus takes place in August. Suddenly, the situation gets more complicated. Another morale appears on the opposite edge of the glade, although it's smaller than our initial acquaintance and thus behaves quite modestly. It is clearly interested in the harem but fears to approach the formidable opponent. It crosses the glade and starts pinching grass nearby as if saying, "I'm just hungry, nothing personal." The large morale is nervous and circles around his harem, as if counting his wives. Everything seems in order. I can relax a bit. Suddenly, we notice a lonely female with a cub grazing in the dense purple willow thickets at the very river bank. Why does she prefer to stay alone? Maybe she's too old, or maybe she has not yet met a hero of her dreams. In any case, the female seems to be happy with her fate and the baby, although it looks quite large. Deer grow fast. At the foot of the forest, quite far from us and from the morals, two wild boars are digging the ground. We can try getting a little closer to them to get a better picture, but it's getting dark and it's time for us to return to the camp. The performance will continue in the morning though. If you want to see wild animals, you need to get up early, before dawn. This time we see two morals at once, but at a considerable distance from each other. Each of them probably has its own harem and there is no need for them to fight. One of them is about 1 kilometer from us, the second one about 300 meters away. The sun illuminated the mountain tops, dividing the slope into orange and lilac bluish patches. The shade quickly descends down the mountain. It seems to us that a little bit more and the morale will appear before our video cameras in all the splendor of morning lighting. Yet, as soon as the first sunbeam touches his antlers, the noble deer, as if telling us the show is over for today, come tomorrow, disappears in the woods. We have a dream to shoot a full-length film with not humans but animals like morals, bears, ibexes, etc. starring. Making such movies takes months and even years. Someday we'll find this time and will gladly return to the Aksai Gorge for several years. Unfortunately, now we have to go back home. The only thing left to do is to embark on a horseback excursion through some places of unspeakable beauty.
Я работаю в парке с 2017.
I have been working in the park since 2017 and I like my job. It is both interesting and hard, I should say. Our goal is to protect and foster reproduction of the animal world. All the park staff are in love with the mountains and the nature.
Такие люди работают в нашем парке.
I have been working in this national nature park since 2018. I came to work here because I really like nature. I have a request to the park's guests. Please help us preserve this wilderness park, at least in its current condition, for future generations. Please do not litter and do not set up bonfires. We went to the most beautiful places of the Ile-Alatau and met people passionate about the noble cause of preserving our nature. We also managed to encounter some representatives of the local fauna. It's time for us to leave, but we are going to come back here in the spring when nature wakes up after the winter entrancement and bursts into blossom again. We hope to see the animals that we didn't meet this time and hope you will join us. Subscribe to the Qazaq TV's YouTube channel and look for us in the social media.